Welcome back, students, to section 1.5. We're going to look at some practice problems for subtracting real numbers. So let's get started with number 1. 6 minus 5 is a typical subtraction problem. We know that that is going to be 1. Negative 6 minus negative 6. Remember the tip of keep, change, change. So we're going to keep the negative 6, change that to a plus, change that to a positive 6. So then we have negative 6 plus 6. Those are two different signs. So that means we take the difference, which is 0. And usually we'd keep the sign of the greater number, but because this is 0, that is our answer. Let's look at the next one. We have negative 8 minus 8. Keep it, change it, and change it. This is different than number 2, so make sure you notice the difference between the two of them. Don't get them confused. All right, so now we have two numbers with the same symbol. So we're going to add them and keep the sign. So 8 plus 8 is 16. Keep the negative sign. So that is negative 16. Number 4, remember, keep it, change it, change it. So we now have 4 plus negative 7, which means we're going to take the difference, which is 3, and keep the sign of the greater number, which is the 7. So our answer is negative 3. Those were the more simple ones. As we progress through these practice problems, they'll get a little bit more challenging as we go. We're going to look at fractions now. Go ahead and get those done and out of the way, and then we'll look at decimals, and then we will look at multi-step problems. So just like in our last practice where we were learning the rules for positives and negatives with addition, we need to make sure our fractions have common denominators. 8 and 3 can be common denominators with 24. So let's get our fractions to have common denominators. I'm going to multiply this one by 3 over 3. And 2 over 3, I'm going to multiply it by 8 over 8. We have negative 3 times 3, which is negative 9 over 24. And then we have 2 times 8, which is 16. 3 times 8 is 24. Now I want to do my keep it, 9 over 24, change it to plus, change it to negative 16 over 24. Notice we have the same sign for both of them. So that means we're going to add them and keep the sign. 9 plus 16 is 25 over 24, and our number is negative. Hopefully you wrote a lot smaller than I just did so that you are not in the next box over. I'm going to erase the answer temporarily. Don't erase yours, I'm just erasing mine so it's not in the way for when we do the next problem. All right, so let's look at this next one. Again, we need common denominators. Well, both of them can be factors of the denominator of 9. So I don't have to change the first one, yay, it stays the same. But I do need to change the second one. I'm going to multiply it by 3 over 3 so that we can get a denominator of 9. Negative 7/9 minus, now I have a negative 1 times a 3. That's a negative 3. 3 times 3 is 9. At this point, I'm going to do the keep it, change, change. And you'll notice we now have different signs. We have a negative and a positive. So we need to take the difference, which is a 4 over 9. The 7 is greater, so our number is negative 4/9. Number 7. Before we can worry about common denominators, we need to change our numbers into improper fractions. So 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 11. So we have a negative 11 over 4 for our first fraction. Now we're going to do the same thing for our second fraction. We have 3 times 2, which is 6, plus 2, which is 8. So we have negative 8/3 here. I'm going to use 12 as our common denominator. So negative 11 over 4 times 3 over 3 minus negative 8 over 3 times 4 over 4. All right, so negative 11 times 3 is negative 33 over 12. And then I have negative 8 times 4, which is negative 32 over 12. Now I will do the keep it. I'm running a little bit out of room. Plus, so kept the first one, changed minus to plus, changed the second one to positive. Okay, so we have a negative number and a positive number, which means we take the difference, which is 1/12. Keep the sign of the larger, which is the 33, so our answer is negative 1/12. Okay, so let's look now at our decimals. I'm going to erase this above here, just so it's not distracting to us. Of course, don't erase yours. And I'm going to switch colors. All right, so we now have decimals. We have 0.014 minus a negative 1.23. I'm going to go ahead and do our keep it, change. So negative 0.14 plus a positive 1.23. Now you notice we have two different signs. We need to find the difference of those. So I'm going to actually subtract them. So I'm going to line them up by decimal. Oh, can you hear the storm that's coming in the video? All right, so I'm going to borrow from my 2. The 3 becomes a 13. 13 minus 4 is 9. 1 minus 1 is 0. Bring down my decimal. Bring down my 1 because 1 minus 0 is 1. So my answer is 1.09. My 1.23 is greater, so that means my answer is going to be a positive number. Number 9. Same problem, except that you notice that the positives and negatives have been switched around a little bit, but the same numbers. So let's just see if we end up with the same answer. So I'm going to keep it, change it. All right. So now I have, again, where I'm going to subtract the 2 of them because they have different signs. And we're going to end up with the same number as far as when we subtract. So go ahead and write that down. But we're not going to end up with a positive version of this number because now the 1.23 is the negative number and it is greater than that 0.14. So this answer will actually be negative, all because they changed which number was the negative number. Number 10. Keep it, so negative 5.839 plus negative 7.42. Ooh, it's starting to come out there. Okay, hopefully it won't be so loud that you can't hear me. Now we have the same sign, both negative, so that means we're going to have to add and keep the sign. So I'm going to line up my numbers with my decimal. I'm going to put my place value 0, my placeholder, 0, my dinosaur egg. 9 plus 0 is 9, 2 plus 3 is 5, 4 plus 8 is 12, carry the 1. 7 plus 1 is 8, plus 5 is 13. Don't forget to bring my decimal straight down. So my answer is 13.259, but don't forget we have two negative numbers, so our answer is also going to be negative. And box it in. All right, so let's scroll up. We are now going to look at a few multi-stepped problems with these so you can see just how you really need to write down each step so that you don't make errors on positives and negatives. Also keep in mind the keep it, change, change. And remember, we only do that with subtraction. We do not do that with addition. All right, so we also need to remember to do GEMDAS. So I have -8 minus, I have a -1 plus 3. Those are two different signs, so I'm going to take the difference, which is 2, and keep the sign of the larger, which is the 3, so we have a positive 2. And then have a minus -2 over here. Now I can actually do my keep it on the 2, change on that subtraction, change on that -2. We now have just our basic 2 plus 2, which is 4. But we're in another situation with a minus sign, so we need to keep it, change, change again. So I'm going to write -8 plus -4. We have two of the same sign, both have a negative sign, so we need to add them, which is 12, and keep that sign. So our answer is actually -12. All right, let's look at number 12. We have decimals in this one, but don't panic. It's not a biggie. We just need to look at our positives and negatives. Actually, we don't have any positives at this point, so we need to look about thinking about keep it, change, change. So we have -7.1 minus, keep the -3.3, change the subtraction to addition, change the -4.9 to +4.9. Made a big difference. All right, so now I'm going to rewrite the first part again. -3.3 plus 4.9. Those are two different signs, which means we need to take the difference, which is 1.6. Keep the sign of the larger, which is the 4.9, so we have a positive number. At this point, we need to do keep it, change, change again, because we have a subtraction sign. So -7.1, change to plus, change our 1.6 to a -1.6. And now we have two numbers with the same sign being added. So that is going to be 8.7. They're both negative, so our number is negative. Number 13. We need to look at the parentheses grouping with the bracket first, I believe. Let me think. This is a lot of parentheses and brackets. Actually, we can do the 5 minus 10 and the -2 minus -6 at the same time. We can do the keep it, change, change at the same time. So let's do that. So we have 5 that we keep. Change the subtraction to plus. Change the 10 to a -10. Minus. All right, we're in a different grouping. We have -2. Keep that. Change the minus to a plus. Change the -6 to a +6. All right, so 5 plus -10. We need to take the difference, which is 5. Keep the sign of the larger, which is the 10. So our number is actually going to be -5 left in here. In our other grouping, we have -2 plus 6. Take the difference, which is 4. Keep the sign of the larger, which is the 6. So we're going to have a +4 in there. Now we need to do one last keep it, change, change in this problem. So keep the -5, change the subtraction to addition, and then change our 4 to a -4. We now have the same sign, so we're going to add them and keep the sign. So 9, keep that negative symbol, and we end up with a -9. All right, number 14. Again, we're going to go through and do our keep it, change, change. So we have -9, keep that. Change the subtraction to plus, change our 15 to a -15. In our second grouping, keep the 12, change the subtraction to plus, change our 7 to -7. We now have 2 negatives in our first grouping, so we're going to add them and keep the sign. So that's 24, keeping that negative, so -24. 12 plus -7. There are 2 different signs, so we're going to subtract them, which is 5. Keep the sign of the larger, which is the 12, so it's going to be a +5 at this point. Now we need to do one more keep it, change, change. So keep the -24, change it to a plus sign, and then change our 5 to a -5. We now have 2 numbers with the same sign, so we're going to add them and keep that sign. So our number is -29. So not as bad as they look. As long as we take it step by step and we actually write down each step. You'll notice that it would be very easy if you don't write down the steps to confuse whether or not we need to do keep it, change, change, or just go ahead and add or subtract. So it's really beneficial to you to write down all of those steps. Okay, so we've got some more fractions. Yay. Okay, so we need to figure out what our common denominator is going to be in these fractions. Let's see, we have an 8, a 3, and a 6. I think we'll go with 24. So let's do that. All right, so let's work on changing these to common denominators. So this will be 3/3 that we multiply it by. We're going to multiply 2/3 by 8/8. This -5/6, we're going to multiply it by 4/4. You might say, it seems like we did this problem before. I believe we did. But when we did it, we didn't have negatives in there. So this is going to give us a different situation. All right, so now we have -3 times 3 is -9/24. 2 times 8 is 16/24. And then we have -5 times 4, which is a -20/24. So we have all the same denominators now. We can actually work on combining. Our first group, or actually our only group we need to deal with, is at the front of the problem, and we need to keep change, change. So we have -9/24 plus -16/24 plus -20/24. And just rewrite that part. Okay, so -9 and -16, they're both negative numbers, so we're going to add them and keep the sign. So we have -25/24 plus -20/24. And at this point, we don't have to change anything anymore. We have an addition problem at this point, and we have 2 of the same sign. So we can actually add them and keep the sign. So that will be -45/24. And that's our answer. We can reduce it, and in your homework, you would probably need to reduce it. But for the sake of time, I'm not going to do that right now. All right, looking at number 16, again, we need to get common denominator, which would be 18. So let's go ahead and work on changing these. So this would be times 3/3. This one would be times 2/2. And then -1/3 would be times 6/6. Okay, don't forget that last bracket. So now we have negative 5 times 3, which is negative 15 over 18. 7 times 2 is 14 over 18. Negative 1 times 6 is negative 6 over 18. Okay, let's go through our keep it, change on the inside of our brackets. So we have 14 over 18 plus 6 over 18, because that negative became a positive. All right, so we have both positive numbers in there now, so we can actually just add them and they stay positive. So 14 plus 6 is 20 over 18. We now need to do a keep it, change. So I'm going to do that right here. So negative 15 over 18 plus a negative 20 over 18. We have the same signs. We're going to add and keep that sign. So that's going to give us a negative 35 over 18. All right, let's look at number 15. Number 15 and 16 have absolute value signs. So we need to make sure we're very careful. Inside this first one, we're going to go ahead and do our keep it, change. And in the second one, we don't need to do that because it's already an addition problem. All right, so negative 3 plus 8. We're going to take the difference, which is 5, keep the sign of the larger, which is the 8, so it's a positive 5 within that absolute value. Negative 3 plus negative 8, we're actually going to add those and keep the sign, so that's negative 11. Now we need to bring our numbers out of those absolute value symbols since we've fully simplified with inside. So we get 5 minus 11. Remember, whatever we bring out becomes a positive number. But now we need to change this into an addition problem. So we're going to keep the 5, change to a plus, change to a negative 11. These are two different signs, so we're going to take the difference, which is 6, keep the sign of the larger, which is the 11. So our answer is actually negative 6. Last one like this. We have 2 minus 11. So let's go ahead and do our keep it, change in both of these. So keep, change. All right, so 2 plus negative 11, take the difference. We get 9 within that absolute value. The 11 is the higher one, so it's actually a negative 9. Negative 4 plus negative 5, they're the same, so we're going to add and keep the sign. So that's a negative 9. So we're going to bring both of those numbers out. Both of them come out as positive with the subtraction in the middle. Now, we could go ahead and do keep it, change, but I think we can look at it and know that 9 minus 9 is 0. There we go. All right, let's look at our last few examples of problems. These are translating words and phrases. So the difference of negative 4 and 10 and negative 2. The way we would write that out is negative 4 minus 10 minus negative 2. Let's go ahead and do our keep it, change. So negative 4 plus negative 10 plus 2. All right, so negative 4 plus negative 10 is going to give us a negative 14 plus 2. Negative 14 plus 2 is giving us a negative 12. Number 18, negative 3 less than the sum of negative 12 and 23. So the first thing I notice is the less than. That is a turnaround phrase. So we need to make sure that we put that minus 3 behind whatever they're telling us after that, okay? So we have the sum of negative 12 and 23. So negative 12 plus 23. That's in parentheses. Minus, that's the less than, negative 3. So don't forget to have that negative with the 3 as well. So when they say negative 3 less than, it's negative 3 less than the sum of negative 12 and 23. So make sure you don't forget that. Negative 12 plus 23 is going to be a positive 11 minus our negative 3. We need to do keep it, change, change. So 11 plus 3, and we get the answer of 14. Okay. All right, let's look at number 19. The sum of negative 23 and negative 11, comma. So that tells me I'm going to have that in parentheses. Negative 23 plus negative 11 decreased by 16 minus 16. All right, so we have negative 23 plus negative 11. They're the same, so I'm going to actually add them. So that's 34 and keep the sign, so negative 34. Bring down the minus 16. I'm going to keep it, change it, so that we can actually add it. These are two negative numbers, so again, I'm going to add them and keep the sign. So that gives us 50, and they both are negative, so our answer is negative 50. Last example, 15 decreased by, so 15 decreased by negative 10 subtracted from, so we've got a negative 10 subtracted from the sum of negative 34 and 13. Okay, so I need to think about this one. This whole thing, let me take that off. This whole thing right here is being subtracted from this right here. So I'm going to erase my 15 minus. I'm going to start over here. Okay, so the sum of negative 34 and 13. That's the first part. The subtracted from part now is going to be our 15 minus negative 10. So let's go through that again. We have 15 decreased by negative 10. So 15 minus negative 10. Subtracted from, that's this part right here, subtracted from the sum of negative 34 and 13. So don't be afraid to erase and start over. You notice that I started to write down the 15 first, and then I realized, nope, that's got to go at the end with that negative 10. All right, so let's look at the negative 34 plus 15. They're different signs, so we're actually going to subtract them, which is 21. And we're going to keep the negative sign since the 34 is higher. Okay. Oh, you know what I just realized? I wrote 15 here instead of 13. I knew. I was like, that doesn't give me 21. What? Now it's in the correct place. Okay. This last problem is just giving us all kinds of issues. So that's negative 21. Bring down my minus sign. Now I have within here 15. Keep that, change it to plus, change the 10 to addition as well, to positive. So negative 21 minus what we have in here is a positive 25. I'm going to go with keep it, change it, change it. We have two negative numbers. We are going to add them and keep the sign. So that's going to be 46. Keep that negative sign. Our number is negative 46. Before we go, let's read our Bible verse. Do not add to what I command you, and do not subtract from it, but keep the commands of the Lord your God that I give you. Deuteronomy 4:2. All right, guys, I hope to see you in the next video. Hope you're having a great week. See you later. Bye.